Welcome, guys, to our first episode of AI Unplugged, where we break down the most complex stories in AI and what they mean for you. So today we have our amazing panel, Reginald Andre with Solvers AI. We have Mike Pina with AI Rocket Ship, Chief AI Strategist. And my name is Zeke Cuevas. I'm CEO of Nuvotech Consulting AI. So today we're going to be just going around table. Guys, let's give each other a chance to just introduce yourself, introduce your company, and what you do. Go for it, Mike.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this fabulous broadcast this Friday, June 27th, our initial drop for AI Unplugged. I'm the CEO of AI Rocket Ship. We are Miami's generative AI powerhouse. We create content and help small businesses to tell their stories with AI tools. We also teach on AI, offering workshops, one-to-one training, allowing users to engage in that environment of learning and creativity. So thank you for having me on the show. A real pleasure.
Awesome. And good afternoon, everyone. Reginald Andre, but I go by Andre, and you normally probably know me as the cybersecurity guy. But with AI comes security, because it's great to make sure that your front door is locked, but we have to also make sure that all of the AI integrations that you're using is secure. There's policies in place, and everybody can be able to use it securely. So that's what my insight's going to be on this show, talking about the small business user and how they can implement AI in their everyday use for their staff.
All right, great. And my name is Zeke Cuevas. Like I said, I am the CEO of Nuvotech Consulting, and we specialize in really helping healthcare practices, providers, clinics, and hospitals launch their ideas, right? So we help you with strategy, optimizing processes, and really implementing solutions and technologies, especially in the era of AI, that will bring a high value and return to your business. So, all right, let's go ahead and get started, gentlemen. Let's dive right in. So today we're going to be discussing the Midjourney lawsuit, right? So this is coming straight from The Wired. So it says that Disney has filed a lawsuit against Midjourney, which is an AI image generation company. It's alleging that Midjourney's AI model unlawfully used copyrighted Disney content to train their systems and generate Disney-like images without permission. So Disney is arguing basically that it violates their intellectual property and that it could harm their brand by creating unauthorized content or variations. So Midjourney hasn't released a response, but the lawsuit is really highlighting an ongoing, growing legal battle over how AI companies source and use copyrighted material to train their models. So what do you guys think here? Do you think that AI companies should be paying Disney and other companies to use their content, or what are you guys' thoughts?
So let me jump into that, getting into the whole discussion about copyright and intellectual property as well. My initial answer to your question is no, don't pay them anything.
Wow.
Let me explain why, though. If what I'm seeing is content that is a direct derivative of, let's say, Minnie and Mickey Mouse, some of the famous characters we grew up with knowing our entire lives, which I know Disney works extra hard to protect their brand and their image, right? If it's a direct derivative, we're taking their exact content and just slightly modifying, yes, I believe you're going to have a copyright issue. Now, I've also seen in the past where artists here, even in Miami, will take a mouse-like character and modify it to their liking and even sell it as art. And it's super creative, by the way. I love it. It's almost giving creators a way of saying, hey, we can do it differently or maybe better than you. But for Disney to say that you cannot use a mouse character in some other type of engagement, I think is just too much control. However, I also think about the creators of the original content of, let's say, Mickey Mouse, which I think it goes back as far as what, 1920s, 1930s, Andre? I mean, it's a character we've grown to love for many years.
That's about right.
Has to be some protection. on it. But right now we're in territory that it comes back to ethical AI use. And I
Mhm.
feel that specifically United States, as opposed to Europe, which has been first in putting stops to what you can and cannot do with generative AI, in Disney and this whole copyright issue, we're walking on eggshells. We're in unexplored territory. And I think that's one of the main focuses of today's discussion, talking about this unexplored territory, kind of like being in the Wild West, but of AI.
Right. For me, I think that there needs to be a line in the sand, because just like how Nike can't just all of a sudden take a Mickey Mouse or a mouse that looks similar to Mickey Mouse and put it on its shoe. AI shouldn't just be able to take, something that looks very close to Mickey Mouse and then just allow someone to use it, especially if someone's using it for money. There needs to be some type of license, royalty, and of course, with AI, that's going to be extremely hard to fight for Disney now and its lawyers to now just try to go after each person individually. So you kind of go after the creator. But I actually have a question. Why are they going after Midjourney? Why didn't Disney go after Google or ChatGPT or something like that? Why are they picking on Midjourney?
So
I
go
I
ahead,
have a
Mike.
hunch.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Zeke. Say your part now, and I'm gonna back you up.
I was just gonna say that, when I read this, just to sidestep really quick, this is like AI's Napster moment. You guys remember that?
I remember.
So back in the 2000s,
Yes.
as a millennial, we remember that Napster started taking record labels songs and artist songs, and what did they do? They posted it for free, and you could go on Napster and download it. And I think at that point they even had a paid subscription or whatever it is, right? So this is like that same lawsuit that's happening, right? And that's what record labels sued the heck out of Napster, because they're like, hey, you can't just take the content we created, the intellectual property and the copyrights and all that stuff, and then just sell it for free, right? But I do agree with you, Mike, that there's two schools of thought, right? There's one that says, okay, all data should be free. All information should be free, and there needs to be some wiggle room to have variations to that, but also not violate intellectual property. So I don't know. I'm somewhere in between.
I'm thinking of, Zeke, from this perspective, like a DJ taking a sound clip and remixing it and making something even better. I grew up in that same era of Napster as well. I had some friends that used Napster as well to download entire albums of the music of the time that we absolutely loved. But I'm also thinking about creative control and being able to quote unquote remix a concept that we like of a mouse, a duck, the character of Goofy, and making our own version of it. My perspective is this: if they win the lawsuit, what kind of a precedent are they setting for future lawsuits? Because I feel what's going to happen is it's going to hinder our creativity, our ability to go further in what we want to design. And for me, as a business owner that relies heavily on generative AI, many tools that I use, I don't want to run into that situation that I'm trying to fulfill a visual concept for a client and I can only go this far, because it's going to affect directly my business model.
That's a good point. That's a great point.
But isn't it like that already?
As far as what?
If you're trying to do some type of visual for a client, you can't just go and take a Disney character and put it and use it on the client's, post or whatever, the magazine or whatever like that, right?
Yes and no. I'm of this perspective. If I can see it, I could probably grab it and manipulate the image. Okay. If I can do a screenshot and I could recreate it in many ways, but again, do I want to put myself in that position? So that brings me to the point of managing expectations, because clients will ask for the world, and the response I constantly get is, yeah, there's an AI tool that can do it in 2 minutes. It's not that easy. It takes time to make AI videos. Even the intro to today's podcast takes a couple of hours. One, because some of us may work like perfectionists. We want a certain style and look, but you have to take it step by step, especially in educating people and managing the expectations as far as, hey, this is what you can and can't do. ChatGPT did a great job of being able to flag certain prompts to forbid you from using any kind of content that may be edgy, things that they don't want you to create with. And so far that's worked. But I would ask myself, should Midjourney also take that same step and say, hey, you can't create this image because it looks like something that Disney did. Try a
Right.
different style prompt.
Yeah, that sounds like a good compromise. But there's always going to be things around it. But what about, could they do like NFTs? Would that kind of work?
I don't think so. I'm gonna be honest, and I think the whole NFT thing died at some point. People weren't willing to pay these crazy high amounts for a specific picture made in a specific way. I'm looking at it from a financial perspective, and those who like collectibles, we like, in many cases, if you like to collect items, you like to collect a tangible item that you can keep at home and display in your wall. NFTs is a little bit different the way that it functions. It's yours, it's unique, but if it's stolen or copyrighted and you're saying it's yours and unique, then you run into an ethical issue. So
Right.
I don't see that happening with NFTs.
Okay.
So moreover, I think for our audience, right, it's important to understand what is AI, right? So let's take a look at like Midjourney. So all AI models, right, they require a set of data, right, or a database to be trained on, right? That's really all AI is, right? To like demystify, because when I think about AI, like I think about iRobot, right, with Will Smith, and like, oh my God, like and they're gonna take over and destroy the world. Eventually, they probably will, but
Or
we don't know.
Terminator.
So, or Terminator, right? It's like Skynet is here. But an AI model, what it is in a nutshell is that it's a mechanism that takes a set of data, it is trained on it, and then it produces an output. So in the case of Midjourney, right, it grabs, let's say, all of Disney content, images, princesses, colors, criteria, and so forth. And then when you type in and you say, hey, give me an image of the Mandalorian and Baby Yoda, it creates that. It says, okay, hey, what's in my database that would create an image that is like the Mandalorian and Baby Yoda at Target? And so that's how it starts to put all those pieces together, right? Because absent of it knowing what the Mandalorian is, AI would not be able to spit out an image of the Mandalorian, right? So that's really, in a nutshell, what Midjourney is doing. Now the challenge becomes that they charge their subscription, right, fee, so they're reselling that, But in terms of the lawsuit, just going back to Andre's point, I think the reason why they are suing Midjourney first is because they're a smaller fish,
right?
And in going after the smaller fish, sometimes just because of litigation and the way things work, it's not necessarily about being right, but who can be right the longest. And Disney has a whole lot of money to last a whole lot of time in court and years upon years and can weigh down their competition. So if they do win, that's going to set a precedent to go into another lawsuit for the bigger fish.
And Zeke, they can drag this out for a long time. We may not see a resolution for 1, 2, 3, maybe 5 years. We've seen lawsuits, how long they can take with large technology companies, whether it's Apple, IBM, I mean, you name it, Samsung. When I believe even the when you're touching the screen on your phone, this technology in its own came under fire of a lawsuit as well. And those cases can take forever. But what's happening in the meantime, other companies are sprouting up each day that can create content for you. And then I ask myself, because we're talking from an American-based perspective right here in the US, what about places where our laws don't have an impact? You think of what happened with the tools coming out of China, for example. Our laws don't necessarily apply. So what if they can get away with making Mickey Mouse characters? And people here in South Florida, in the United States, right, in domestic US, right, are using those tools that are based over there. They're still getting away with the damage to Disney's reputation.
That's a great point. Yep. And China, like, I mean, as you may know, China is the nemesis here of the story, because they definitely steal intellectual property left and right. And we're not even talking about just images. They literally steal technology, you know? So it's like, yeah, you're right. Talk about controlling it here, but what happens overseas? Unknown.
Yeah.
Correct.
So if hopefully some of the bigger companies come to Midjourney's help. I don't know if Midjourney has to set up a GoFundMe account or whatever they have to do, but they're definitely going to want Google and all of the bigger companies to be on this side, and that way they can defend it. Because like it was mentioned, if they lose this case, it goes upstream, and it's going to be much harder for these other companies to provide that service. And maybe someone like Mike, you may then go to or whoever, not you, Mike, but someone goes and just uses a different product that doesn't have that same regulation in that country.
Now, the other thing too, I wanted to mention, because what I end up doing at times, if I have to create an image that may be in a similar likeness to something that could possibly get flagged, right? There is a way to reverse engineer your prompts. So if you're not going to create Minnie Mouse and you're typing into ChatGPT, Midjourney, whatever, create Minnie Mouse, with a Yankees baseball cap, for example, you may get a flag saying, no, we can't do it. But what about creating a prompt that says such a mouse character in this style likeness with a Yankees baseball cap on there? Will that work? And there's a chance it may get through that gate that's gonna originally would have stopped it. That's happened, and people are not oblivious to this. I mean, they use reverse engineering in prompts.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, the good news about all of this, guys, is that there's a silver lining that will come as a result of all that. Because if we learned anything from the past and technologies, is that at first they kind of start like this unregulated, thing, right? And AI has been grabbing everything, pulling everything in to create. It's kind of like a monster, right? Just like consuming data out there. But this is how all technology starts. First, it's unregulated, it gets sued, and then obviously the state, the government, and different entities will have to start creating governance around it and regulations to say, okay, hey, here are the standards, and like you were mentioning, Mike, here's the ethical use of AI.
Correct.
Well, all right. So I think we're good on this topic. What's our next topic, Zeke?
All right. So another really, really cool topic that came across my desk is there's this new MIT study that came out on ChatGPT and the use of ChatGPT, right? And it has to do with the use of ChatGPT related to the cognitive decline in younger generations. So let me unpack that. So this study basically is saying that it's actually damaging people's ability to critically analyze. Their critical thinking skills are being affected. And so the study, what it did in a lab was that it had 3 different groups write out SAT essays, right? So those 3 groups were like, one, they were using ChatGPT. The second one was kind of like our generation, they're using Google, right? And then the third was absolutely nothing. Like, so all from their head, all just critical analysis. So what the study did is that they use, there's a technology called EEG. You probably have seen in the healthcare space that just kind of measures your patterns in your brain, right? And your brain activity. And so what happened was they found that the initial group that was using ChatGPT was more willing to not think about the problem, right? But rather just say, hey, ChatGPT, copy and paste.
Yeah.
Right. So at an early age, and then it improves, obviously, right? With if you use Google, then it improved. And then if you didn't use Google, you really had a lot of brain activity and critical thinking. But it really, really highlights that how do we move forward with AI, right? So this is new to all of us now. But what about kids that are just starting? Like, think about, like, man, I have two little girls, and it's like, man, sometimes like there's a tendency to be iPad kids, and that has its own issue, right? So what do you guys think?
I think for me personally, about 2 weeks ago, I don't know if you guys remember when ChatGPT was down, and I almost called in sick because I was like, I don't know how I'm going to like answer all these emails and do all this stuff. You know? So it's definitely made my mind much lazier because rewrite emails, review proposals, compare things. I'm using it's definitely a mental shortcut. And I would agree that I don't know what I was doing 18 months ago and how I could even do this. And now it's kind of like a calculator, right? Like, when, you can do 5 times 5 is 25, but then once you had that calculator, you're like, all right, I don't really need to know all this anymore. So
it's interesting times we're living in, and I got to thank my grandpa because he was the first ChatGPT, and even as a 10-year-old, he would say, Mike, what's 10 times 10? And I'd have to figure out plus 50, plus 45. And I'm like, how do you get all these answers, abuelo? Because he was just doing them so fast. He was a old school businessman, no calculators. And one thing that I always held on with that is that we have to use the mind as much as possible. Artificial intelligence has both pros and cons when it comes to cognitive learning, especially for most of us who have kids. Uh, if we're teaching them to quickly jump to AI to solve a math problem, okay? I'm not saying the tech is not going to be there tomorrow. What I'm saying is if we teach them to think like this all the time, what happens when the power goes out? What happens when ChatGPT goes down? And even now, like during the daytime, I teach a business class, and I know these are all adult learners, by the way. I know they're on ChatGPT. I know they answer with ChatGPT, and they answer quite well until I ask them that one question with the fine lining. So, what did you think? Or tell me in your own words what you learned, and then I get the blank, look on the face. So, I have to agree with that study that was done that when it comes to learning, we can't always just be quick to grab a phone and look it up in ChatGPT. And before that, it was Google it. And before that, it was something else, I'm sure. We have to go through the cognitive process, the discovery phase.
Yeah, I think definitely that just like we were talking about the standards and regulations and the ethical use, right? There's going to have to be a point where we make rational decisions and put some restrictions around it so that we as humans, right, can grow and develop in a healthy way. That's really what it's going to come down to. And what that looks like is really us saying, hey, let's say, suppose from 0 to, let's say, 16 or 17, right? You need to engage in these activities without AI, right? Without Google or whatever that is. Because my fear here is, and just like Andre was saying, I do this sometimes when I'm at work or at different scenarios to just pull up something more quick because it does accelerate, and it serves as your co-pilot, right? Like your sidekick here to really accelerate work and produce more, and that's okay as a support. But I've made it a huge point because I noticed I'm getting a little lazier with my thinking too by deferring it to ChatGPT or any other model. And I take a second to really think about the problem myself. Correct. So before you use AI, what do I think is the solution? What is the problem we're facing? What are all the variables? So I even use sometimes pen and paper. I just write these things down, map it out first. Okay, that's good. Now let me check with ChatGPT and do a stare and compare, a contrast. Because I honestly sometimes find that my thoughts are more unique than ChatGPT's. Remember that it's a model, and it's kind of like just reprocessing and regurgitating a lot of the stuff that's already out there. So I think there's a balance that has to be struck in between.
in this microwave world that we live in, I just don't think the balance is going to happen.
Yeah, we're struggling against it's not only the world, but the current generation of young people who are learning. It's the whole vibe is I need an answer, I need a quick,
Right.
shorter attention span, and move on to
Instant
the next thing.
gratification.
Yeah.
But I also think, and I've seen a lot of young folks like here in the area during, when high school gets out and they're crossing the street and they're like this on their phone,
Mhm.
not aware that there's a car about. Think of that in the cognitive space. You're reading your answer, but you're not really grasping the concept. And my concern is the next generation of thinkers, philosophers, uh, medical people, nurses, doctors, physicians, lawyers. What's going to happen? Are they going to be using a tool to help them in their daily workflow, or is that going to be the go-to that they only use a tool? Because you need to have the head knowledge and then head knowledge applied. So in our case, we're all using AI to help us in our businesses, and I feel that it complements and enhances what we already know. But
Mhm.
if a person is going to only rely on that without prior knowledge, then you're putting yourself in a position, I think, to fail, quite honestly, in the future. So
Yeah.
we have to tread carefully and educate people, be realistic.
No, for sure. And another thing that comes to mind, just really quick on this topic, is that as things continue to evolve, right, at some point, humanity will start entering into what's kind of like transhumanism, right? Where we start like really merging with technology. And that's crazy. So, like, if you remember, like, the Matrix, you get to plug in, you have a chip back here, and that's called Neuralink nowadays, right? You could plug in and then you could download, jujitsu, and then now jujitsu. So, so what
Which I wouldn't
happens?
mind. I was
Yeah.
fascinated by that scene in the Matrix, just jiu-jitsu. Wow.
Yeah. So
But
imagine at some point that if we had, let's say, all of us Neuralink, right? And Neuralink was connected to the web, which it will be at some point, and you don't even have to prompt ChatGPT. You have a thought, and it processes, and then you're able to spit out whatever you got from the net, in a sense. That's going to be wild. So I don't know the health effect that's going to have on us, what the brain activity is going to look like. So it's an interesting world right now.
we're at the forefront of something great and also something that could be disastrous. And all of us are kind of like waiting to see what happens. Others are already starting to ride the AI wave and explore of what can happen. It's a fascinating time to be alive, to explore, to learn AI. Getting back to the whole cognitive learning thing, I also see it as a benefit, especially for kids. I have a 9-year-old, and I want her to learn prompting. I don't want her to be that person who applies for a job, and because they don't have on their resume prompting as a skill, that they don't get the job. So I read a post today, for example, it's super fascinating on Instagram. It said, while your kids are home on TikTok and playing Roblox, mine took an AI class this summer.
Nice.
And
Yeah.
it blew
Nice.
my mind. And I said, why am I not doing this already? I should be selling AI classes initially. But how are your kids spending their summer? Because 3-4 hours a day on Roblox, is it healthy or not? Now, remember, at the same time, I'm the kid who grew up with Nintendo, Super Nintendo, and yeah, we would spend Saturdays playing video games at friends' houses, but we also went to play football and basketball, run around the pool and be silly kids, because that's what you do during summer. Ride bike, get out there, sweat, fall, laugh, socialize. Can you still socialize on Roblox the same way you would face to face? I don't think so.
Mm,
It's a different type of socialization.
No.
So we're
mm.
at that impact where technology and humanity are really embracing. How are we going to manage that? I don't have a concrete answer for that. I'll be very honest with you. It's still
That's
too
good.
early.
So, gentlemen, what do you think, how this applies? What will be your unique perspective in your industries, in your business, on how this applies?
Well, for me as the small business owner, and when it comes to hiring, I'm going to continue to see a lot of, and this is not a knock or insult, I hope not, but a lot of socially awkward 20-something-year-olds that don't know how to, conversate and have, meaningful thoughts because they're going to be so used to the answer being here and not using their critical thinking. So that's what I see, unfortunately, when it comes to hiring as a business owner.
What about you, Mike?
From a human resources perspective, because I'm also in that same mode, Andre, towards the end of this year, we're looking at taking on some staff. I'm probably going to have to come up with a really hard questionnaire that analyzes this, no use of phones, because even in sales alone, you have personal selling. And my own mother taught me this a long time ago. She says people buy because of the salesperson, not always because of the product. They buy because of you as the vendor. You have that part of convincing, engaging, and connecting with your client. So from a hiring perspective, you want to be able to take on people that know how to interact with others, how to sell, how to read body language and understand those visual cues. I would never take a cell phone out and take a picture of a client and tell me, what is he thinking? Because it's obviously going to be awkward and it won't work. So for Andre, myself, we're put in a position that is more difficult and that we have to work extra hard to evaluate who's coming into the organization. Are they going to be able to really get the mission that we have?
Yeah. So just to echo the same, right? Those are going to be real challenges for us as business owners as we continue to move forward, right, in the era of AI. Now, I do see a unique opportunity for us, and especially in my field in the healthcare space, for us to architect or be the white paper writers of what the future looks like. And I think that's something we need to spend a lot of time thinking about, solving, because I see an opportunity for AI within the healthcare space to bring a level of optimization that is not only to bring more profit to companies, which is fine, reduce costs, but also that the patient health can really, really genuinely improve. At some point, we're all patients, right? We all need healthcare and we need this to work well. And so the opportunity here is, how do we architect? How do we implement usable, compliant, regulated AI to really solve and bring back the power of health back to us, right? That we can monitor our vitals, we can monitor our lab results, we have trends, we can really, really, really take control of that. And I think we're already starting to see those beginnings in that space with AI. So I'm really excited for that and for us to continue to pressing forward to architect those solutions for the best of humanity.
Well said, man.
Healthcare has they can reap the biggest benefits from artificial intelligence. And I spent almost 6 years in healthcare, in ICU, in emergency services, also through the patient journey. And I can tell you, there's always room for medication errors, patients waiting longer than they need to get attended to. Now, you introduce AI technology that is both HIPAA compliant, that meets all the requirements of ACA, Agency for Healthcare Administration, JCO as well, in our facilities, right? If it's compliant enough, you can actually improve the patient experience by keeping them informed. When results come in, as you know, when you get an X-ray or CT scan, sometimes those results are analyzed and transcribed overseas. I literally had a doctor in Israel reading one of my CTs at one point many years ago.
Wow.
And I was like, wow. Recently in the news, I heard there was a robotic surgery completed. I believe the patient was in Africa and the physician was somewhere maybe in North America, remotely controlling a surgery. I mean, what a great time to be alive with technology. But it will help our healthcare facilities. And I know individuals such as yourself, Zeke, that consults directly with healthcare services, facilities, and different agencies. they stand the most to benefit by learning what are the tools we can use in our facilities that is going to improve the patient outcomes. And it all ties back into reimbursement. So with this whole insurance
Absolutely.
business,
Absolutely.
they're
Yeah.
the best to benefit right now with AI technology.
Yeah, and something that's been burning in my heart, for example, is reducing provider burnout, right?
Mhm.
And that
Yeah.
means that, like, as you may know it, doctors are at the end of their rope sometimes when it comes to just seeing so many patients and being burdened by so much paperwork, right? And so I think as we implement technologies that eliminate that administrative burden, right, we'll start seeing happier doctors. We need happier doctors because
We
the
do.
more time you spend with them and the better they're in shape, they'll better take care of you. And that'll give us more airtime with a human to human connection for them to really understand what it is that we're struggling with, right? And give us better quality of care. So that is a silver lining, a huge priority for me. And so I'm excited for that, and we just need to continue to architect those solutions and implement them going forward.
Yeah. So it sounds like we want a balance here because on one side of the coin, we're talking about making sure the humans are using their critical thinking skills, but at the same time, we're like, AI, we really need your critical thinking skills because we're burned out. So we do have to definitely balance that.
Absolutely, that's a great one. That's
And
absolutely it.
I had a question for Andre from the cybersecurity side, just thinking about healthcare technology and the intersection of AI. Do you see any potential pitfalls or areas of risk where having an AI technology could potentially, for example, leak information about patients' history, financial records?
Mhm.
Any
Yep.
best practices that you recommend in your experience?
Yeah, great question. First thing is that the organization needs to have an AI policy in place. You
Yes.
shouldn't just not, if you don't have a policy, that means you literally can have any of your staff members with a free or $20 version of ChatGPT and just putting information. I was presenting the other day and I saw we did a demo and I just used that employee's laptop and they weren't in medical, but here they are. It was financial, and they uploaded entire Excel spreadsheets with client, name,
Wow.
email address,
Ooh,
date of birth,
Wow.
financial information, and this is wealth management. So we're talking a lot of money here. And I wouldn't be surprised if you have, a first year, nurse or whatever their thing is, and they're like, I'm not 100% sure, or I want to be 100% sure. Let me take a picture of this, and then it's got
Mm.
the patient's name and all of this stuff, and then
oh boy.
ask ChatGPT and say, you are a medical provider. Tell me what you think of this to, bounce an idea. And now that's up, for the algorithms and language models to learn off of. And unfortunately, and I tell everybody I meet, make sure, regardless of what tool you're using for AI, make sure you have two-form factor authentication on and all of this stuff, because
Mm.
soon these tools will get compromised because the same password that you're using for your LinkedIn is the same password for your Bank of America, which is the same password for your ChatGPT, and this is all bad.
Oh man, that's
Wow.
huge. That's huge. That's so deep.
I'm telling if that doesn't rock your world for whoever's listening to this, it did to mine because listen, I don't want my personal information out there in cyberspace. I mean, it's bad enough when you get a report from Equifax saying,
Yeah,
"Hey, your social security is on the dark web," and we're here
Yeah.
like, "Oh no, what do I do?" There's nothing you can do. Just sit
right.
and wait.
Yep.
Yeah, no, but what Andre was saying, obviously an expert in this field, right, is that yes, you need to by order of priority establish a governance, and
Yes.
that's like tomorrow. That's like right now, you know. And Andre is like the lead on those thoughts, right? It's like, hey, putting those policies in place. How do we do that safely? How do we protect company information? How do we protect our personal information? So that's an excellent point, Andre.
Thank you.
All right,
Amazing
guys.
stuff.
Well, that's all we have for today's episode of AI Unplugged. Any final thoughts, gentlemen?
Learn AI. What I keep telling everybody, don't wait for it to come over and and take your job, which maybe we could pick up on the next episode.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, and the
Yeah.
famous quote on that is, AI won't take your job, but the person using AI will.
Oh,
Oh, that's a good one.
I'm gonna
Awesome,
put that on
guys.
my LinkedIn or somewhere today. That was really good. Thank you, Andre.
Awesome, guys. So, hey, listen, a huge thanks to you, Mike, to you, Andre. Thank you guys for joining today, for just jumping in for us to just discuss this, socialize, good ideas surrounding AI. And until the next episode.
Awesome.
All right,
Thank you,
guys.
guys.
See you later.